Salesforce announced its new platform in 2014, and ever since that time, it has grown to be one of the biggest providers of enterprise software in certain domains. And what that does for business analysts is that it helps create a lot of new opportunities for business analysts. And so I'm really happy to have with us today Vanessa Grant, who is a certified Salesforce business analyst. And Vanessa is here to help us understand exactly what those opportunities look like and really what Salesforce really is. The one thing I wanted to mention here is that Vanessa enjoys messes and solving problems with technical solutions and process improvements. And that's directly from her LinkedIn profile, which is going to be in the description. Thank you for joining us today, Vanessa.
Oh, my pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you as well. And let's really just kind of dive into the subject matter at hand, because I think there are a lot of analysts out there who are very interested in understanding what Salesforce is and how they can get into it. So I'm wondering if maybe we can just kind of start off right at the top, and if you can help us understand really what Salesforce is meant to do.
Well, Salesforce actually, it's a platform, so it solves any number of business problems. But I would say it's bread and butter. It's a CRM, customer relationship management software. So I don't know if you've ever worked in that space, but there were for many years all sorts of different CRMs. You had Sugar, you had Goldmine, you had SalesLogix, and then when Salesforce kind of came in and put everything into the cloud, it really initially focused on how you get from a lead to a sale. And then as it expanded, and again, it being a platform, it was so customizable that it was able to solve even more problems. So between acquisitions and other people just kind of coming up with really creative ways to use the platform, I mean, you can solve everything from like marketing issues to really complex sales cycle issues to field service issues. There is almost nothing there's nothing I can actually think of off the top of my head that's a business problem that you couldn't solve in some way with Salesforce or something that connects with Salesforce, because there's so many applications that also work so nicely with it. So Salesforce really, from a business standpoint, is a great tool to use as kind of like the hub of your business.
Wow. That is a glaring endorsement for the software itself, right? Because if I was to really just kind of understand it, you're saying that really Salesforce does a lot of different things. You're saying that bread and butter of Salesforce is CRM, and CRM is really just around customer relationship management, but you're saying that it can support a lot of the sales process, not just the CRM part, right? You're saying anything and everything around
anything and everything. I mean, it's because it can be the hub. I mean, it gives the users of Salesforce and also the customers of the businesses that use Salesforce a real seamless experience from start to end, because you could have Service Cloud, which is a Salesforce product, and so you've already bought your product. Now you're calling in for support, and that customer service person would already have every interaction you've had with the organization so far. If you need field service, okay, that's in there. They have all your information. They know who you spoke to yesterday, and it's mobile. I'm a fan, but that's the thing, you get into Salesforce, and the people that are really into Salesforce are really enthusiastic about the product. And I think that's why we kind of come up with new innovative ways to solve business problems. And that's what gets me jazzed.
Yeah, and I've noticed that about the Salesforce community. I mean, people love being part of that community. I think more so than a lot of other places that I've seen, which is actually really, really good to see that you have a group of professionals that are kind of grouping around a product. I think it says to me that it is, Salesforce has been around since I think 1999, but it was really around 2014, 2015, 2016 where they started to see major growth because of the fact that they launched their new kind of consolidated platform and everything else. And since then, I think not only have they gotten big as a company, but the community around Salesforce has really grown as well. So amazing to see that. If we're to look at the product from really kind of a manager's perspective, would you say that it is a piece of software that is it like really a lot of other enterprise software where as a manager, you would consider purchasing different modules of the software and implementing based on your needs, or how does that work?
Oh, absolutely. So most folks usually start with Sales Cloud, which is really the original Salesforce CRM.
Right.
And then as you know, depending on how much you invest in it and how well it's implemented, you might consider, okay, well, let's get Marketing Cloud, let's get Service Cloud, or for example, if you have a very complex business process, you look into a CPQ to help you configure price quotes. I mean, there's even special clouds for industries. So there's Health Cloud is really hot right now. There's Education Cloud. There's, I always say when I'm talking to folks that I mentor in the Salesforce space, really think about what the problem is that you want to solve, and then what your client does on a day-to-day basis, whether it's their industry or their day-to-day job. And then that'll kind of direct you into the Salesforce modules that you want to expand into.
Understood. And it's really, when you say Health Cloud and Education Cloud, what I'm assuming there is that it's a version of the Salesforce components that has certain best practices kind of already configured or baked into it related to those industries. Is that a right way of understanding it?
Absolutely. It's Salesforce with additional stuff on top, so that it's very catered to the types of processes that you would see in the health industry or at a nonprofit or at an education institute.
Right. So it's kind of configured by domain in a certain sense within sales itself. It's but kind of by industry and domain, it seems like, right?
Yeah, you could kind of buy like the white label industry version, okay, nothing specific. Or if you want to get really specific, because a lot of folks just want to, a lot of industries like the health industry, if you're a doctor's office or dentist office or whatever, if you have a few different buildings across the country, you want to connect them all in one central hub that lives in the cloud, you could get something like Health Cloud. And I'm not saying it's an easy implementation, but a lot of those processes that you are used to seeing on a day-to-day basis will be already built in, less configuration. And really that's what Salesforce promotes, is keeping it low code, as automated and scalable as possible.
Wow. And so, I mean, if they have those types of solutions, it seems it's no wonder that they've made such a huge impact in such a short period of time with the platforms that they have. Now, as a business analyst who wants to specialize in Salesforce, would you say that, the way that I like to explain business analysis is really across three different broad categories of analysis work you can do, right? So there's category number one, where you're doing a lot of business case related work to help management decide whether they should even start a project or not. Category number two, where you're actually executing on a project that has been approved. Or category number three, where you're doing a lot more support, application support and solution support work for a product that's already in production and working. Between those three different categories, where would you say the majority of Salesforce business analysts do their work?
Well, for sure, I've spent my time in all three, but I would say it really depends on if you're working at a consultant or if you're working as an internal BA. Okay. I did consulting for the last year, and almost all of it was, the project execution type work, because yes, while they wanted to understand what the current state looked like, that way you don't want to automate a bad process. So they wanted some consulting in that regard. For the most part, there's already a project in the works. Either they're looking to implement something or they're looking to solve a specific business problem, and they already have the licenses for it, and they just need somebody to kind of guide them along and get the project to completion. Now that I'm working as an internal BA, yes, I'm always going to have project work. That's a given. But a lot of it is, okay, let's look at what the current state is. And then also let's keep up with the enhancements. I mean, Salesforce, again, being a platform, they have releases 3 times a year, and they are doing really major updates on their platform where it is not an uncommon story in the Salesforce world where you spent 6 months configuring something to solve a business problem, and then in the next release, Salesforce came up with something that's just going to automate it, and you can scrap all your code and
solves the problem for you. That's right. Yeah, that's right. And that's so common, actually, especially with a lot of cloud providers who now have the ability to do regular releases like that, right? I think that's really just, I guess you could call it a bit of a challenge, but you solve a problem and the software provider solves it for you in the future. I often find with cloud implementations, you can have also somewhat of the opposite problem where you're really using a feature or function and then the provider decides, hey, you know what, this isn't something we want to continue to support anymore. So being in the cloud, I think, has a lot of its own challenges, which is a totally different conversation we can get into. So you would say that as an analyst, as a consultant, you've done a lot more project execution work where you're actually helping to do the requirements and the configuration to deploy a new piece of software. As a permanent employee, you're kind of between a lot of the support and project work. Is that right?
That's correct. And I would say, as far as the configuration goes, it really depends on the project. If you're working on an enterprise level Salesforce project, you might have an architect and 5 developers on it, and they don't really necessarily want the BA in there configuring stuff necessarily on a day-to-day basis. If you're on a smaller team, like you're gonna have to, right, let's do this.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that speaks to just the general concept of when you're working in a smaller team or smaller organizations. A lot of times you need to kind of be like a jack of all trades, and a lot of times you do need to roll up your sleeves, configure, sometimes even code as a business analyst, right? So interesting. So we would say a lot of it is, all right, so project execution work and support work, and there is probably, and you yourself, you said you've done some business case related work as well in that space.
Oh,
is that
sure.
right?
Absolutely. Probably mostly internally, but it does come up occasionally if you're, working with a consultant firm and you have a client that is, this is what I wanted to do, and these are the licenses I have, and you're like, I don't know if this is going to cut it. Why don't you consider maybe this additional thing in the App Exchange that's free, or maybe it's only going to cost $5 a user, and you can build a case to ultimately implement the entire solution, which would include Salesforce and whatever other add-ons make sense.
Yeah, and see, that example that you gave is such a good example, because oftentimes what I try to tell business analysts is that if you want to get into doing business case work, a lot of times it's hard for you as a new business analyst to get into that, because you need implementation experience to really understand. If you're doing custom software, you really need to understand how custom software gets built. But if you're doing off-the-shelf implementations like Salesforce, you really have to understand the ins and outs of how the product works to help management understand what is and is not possible at the business case stage. So this example that you're giving of, going into the actual app store and making those types of trade-offs, that is where a lot of experienced business analysts come in handy to even senior management, right? Is understanding the product, having implementation experience to know where the pitfalls are a lot of times, and and kind of factoring that into the overall cost, right? Management oftentimes says, hey, this should be, a 6-month implementation or a 3-month implementation, at $500,000. And when you actually look at it, you're like, well, let's just triple those numbers just to start off with. But you could justify why it is you're tripling those numbers, right? You can give the rationale because you have that implementation experience. So I think a lot of this is very, very valuable for a lot of up and coming business analysts to understand that even in like an off-the-shelf implementation world, understanding the product is really, really important.
Yeah.
One of the pieces of advice that I always tend to give to a lot of analysts is to make sure that anytime that they get into business analysis and they learn some of the core skills, that they should really strongly consider specializing either by some sort of a domain or by some system. And that advice really goes against what I've done in my own career, because I'm a generalist, but I would say that you can only be a generalist and enjoy it if you're a certain type of person. But I would say that 95% of people should specialize. And in doing so, I think that what analysts are doing is really kind of providing a lot more value in the actual job market to a lot of people who hire for Salesforce analysts. Can you kind of help us understand that market a little bit better, and maybe where what that job market looks like for Salesforce business analysts into the future?
Oh goodness, it's exploding right now. It's a good time to get into Salesforce if you're looking to get into BA work. I think certain spots are maybe getting a little saturated. So you have to imagine. You remember you said that Salesforce started in 1999. So back then, people, how am I going to implement this? I don't know. Let's grab the receptionist and have her learn how to administer this. And that's how I kind of came up into Salesforce, is like, oh, Vanessa, your team's going to start running this. And I home grew my own dev and home grew my own admin. We didn't know what we were doing. I mean, I'm sure like my poor company that I don't know how much technical debt I left them while I was trying to learn things, but you know, that's what happens. And so I think where things have evolved in the industry is where people were kind of looking for people to be administrators initially. Now, that everybody's kind of come up with all these different ways to implement the program, and with all the different clouds they have, there's really a need for BAs to kind of come in with a lot of that specialization, you know, those best practices. And I don't know any marketing cloud best practices, but you bring me in for a sales cloud project, and yeah, I know a lot of best practices. I can give you advice on when it's good to code, when we should use something from the App Exchange, this should look like, how I've seen this business process done in Salesforce before. And those are the types of specializations that I bring to the table that people are spending a lot of money for, and there just isn't a whole lot of people that are doing this specifically with Salesforce that kind of bring that expertise to the table. So it's a really good time if you're willing to study those best practices. You don't need to know where all the clicks are and do all the configuration, but you need to be able to offer your best advice on what this should look like when it's all implemented and done.
Very interesting, because as an advisor now, you're not just a Salesforce advisor, but you're now a sales process advisor as well, right? Because you're not just coming in and saying, hey, I understand the tool and what it can do for you. You're coming in now to your clients and you're saying, here are some sales best practices that a lot of other organizations use that works really well for them. Let's see if we can tweak it to make it work for you, instead of just kind of, reinventing the wheel from scratch. So as a consultant, you're really bringing both elements to your clients. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, Salesforce they have created their platform so that it will apply to most organizations. And yeah, you can have every company thinks they're a special flower. But as much as you can convince them of what the best practices are, and how other companies have successfully implemented Salesforce to succeed in the areas that they are struggling in. Yeah. You don't want to throw a whole bunch of, you could throw a whole bunch of code at it to keep doing your really, really, really custom processes, but maybe it's also a time to, let's look at how we can make your processes more efficient, and then let's automate them.
That's excellent. That is excellent. And that seems to me like like in the job market, it's a deadly combination of skills to have, because when somebody hires a professional like that, they're saying, hey, look, we're killing really two birds with one stone here, because we're getting somebody who understands the product, and we're also getting somebody who's not just going to take orders. They're going to give us feedback about whether they think we're doing things properly and make a really good case for why we should be doing things differently. So that's, I would say, a great direction for somebody to take their career in if they're interested in specializing in that way. I'm wondering, for the business analysts who are really just starting to kind of get into the profession, and now they've just recently made the decision to get into Salesforce, can you offer any kind of guidance or advice on what a good starting place for them would be?
Sure. So with Salesforce, I would say, again, think about the problems that you want to solve. And then from there, you can figure out where you want to specialize. Marketing Cloud looks totally different from Sales Cloud. You can study Sales Cloud, and then if you try to pivot to Marketing Cloud, that is a difficult pivot. So as soon as you understand the problems that you want to solve, you can kind of, okay, let's look at the landscape of products that Salesforce offers, and let's look at the industries, and okay, these are the things that I want to study and specialize in. So for example, my little niche is contract management. I don't know why, I like contract management. So besides Salesforce Sales Cloud, where there is a lot of contract transactions, I also have specializations in DocuSign and Conga, just because I want to bring that complete solution and see, when I speak to a client or when I'm working somewhere, I want to be able to give them an end-to-end solution that incorporates Salesforce as much as possible. But where Salesforce fails, I don't want to have to, build DocuSign. That's not what I'm looking to do. So as far as new people coming in, if you're going kind of the Sales Cloud route, you want to start with the Salesforce admin certification. And then as soon as you can, get some sort of consultant certification. So either Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, if you're in the service industry, you can do, they Salesforce communities, which I think is called Experience now. If that's more what you're interested in, field service lighting, those are the types of areas that you can specialize in. And then if you're going more the marketing route, you don't need an admin certification for that. You can just get a marketing cloud administrator certification and then go to consulting. Now, if you are just looking purely for, I just need a job, where's the market as quickly as I possibly can, there are a lot of people that have that Salesforce admin certification. There are all the folks that heard that there's a lot of money in administration have that certification. So you really have to lean on your BA skills and market yourself as a BA that has a very strong technical base. To really kind of stand out from all the admins that are like, look, I'm really technical. And also I could do BA work. So if you go more the marketing route, since it's a newer product, there is a lot more demand, even at a administrator level. So if you wanted to spend a couple of years, learning all the ins and outs of where all the clicks are, and then while you're studying for that consulting, you will get a job much quicker going that route, just because it's the new shiny thing.
Understood. I mean, so much good advice out there, because I take away two things from what you said right there. Oftentimes I see a lot of very, very ambitious analysts who come in and say, I'm going to learn everything SAP, or I'm going to learn everything Salesforce, right? And my guidance always is that it's just simply not possible, right? Unless you're like a superhuman who really is just way beyond capabilities of most other humans, you have to understand the complexity of a lot of these products, right? If you're trying to specialize in Salesforce marketing, that can take you years to learn inside out. If you're trying to specialize in Salesforce, the sales component, again, it can take you years, and you can really go down to a certain level of niche, like contract management, for example, where now you're learning not just Salesforce, but you're now learning DocuSign and Conga and all of these other tools, right? And so my first piece of advice usually is hey, pick one module, start there, which is, I think, one big takeaway that I think you've helped us confirm there. Start at the module where you think things are going well, learn that inside out, and then you can decide which way to go from there. The second thing I really understand here is that, again, just like with a lot of other products and a lot of software products out there, there's a certain period of time where certain certifications, like the Salesforce admin certification, is of value. What your take on it right now is that your sense is that area might be a little bit oversaturated right now. So that by itself isn't necessarily going to be good enough, maybe the way it would have been maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So you need that as a bare requirement now, but the standards are a little bit higher.
Yeah. And you know what? It's just a matter, I don't even think that it's difficult, but if you are just leaning on that admin certification, it's going to be challenging because there's so many people that have it. And like I said, they're going to say, hey, I've got soft skills too. I could be a BA, just hire me for a BA role.
Right.
And so if you come in as an already established BA and have even if you come in with a Salesforce admin certification and have a Scrum Master certification, there's so many Salesforce projects that use Agile, like that's a way to differentiate yourself. I have my Conga DocuSign thing that differentiates me. And those are the different things where if you can really brand yourself as a BA that specializes in the business process. I always say in these interviews, which, it always works out, like you don't have to worry that I'm going to embarrass you in front of a client. I speak their language because these are the business processes that I understand. And so, I might not be able to be your administrator, but I understand your business, and that's where I add the value. And if you can convince an interviewer of that, then you're golden.
Yeah, excellent. This is all such valuable advice. And, the last couple of conversations that I've had are making me think that I should be specializing in some domain as well. But again, like I say to most people, right, I think there's a small group of people out there where, I've tried to specialize in the past, but I always find myself, I'm 6 months in, a year into a project, and I say, look, I got to do something totally new because I just have this kind of itch sometimes just to get into something new. But I think that most people that I encounter are not that type of a person. And the value of specializing in something like Salesforce, the value of specializing in a certain business process, I mean, I don't think we have to say much more, right? Vanessa is a perfect example of the benefits of specializing in that way. So I really want to thank you for joining us today to help us really understand what the product is and giving our members and our audience members such good direction on how they can get into the profession. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. For everybody that's listening to this, please find Vanessa's contact information, her LinkedIn profile in the description, and we'll see everybody on the next one.